Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the old world. I hope you guys are all doing well, and welcome to the Skaven vs Tomb King showdown. It's going to be THROTT the Unclean facing off against Arkin the Black, and I believe he is going to be on the evil cackling necromancer, Jerry, because I don't see how you could ride this thing and just not be, laughing in the most evil fashion you could perhaps conjure. But it is going to be Arkin the Black versus THROTT. Now, I really like this Tomb King's army. It's very hard to read. As soon as I loaded into the game, I saw 2 skeleton spearmen and a screaming skull catapult. Usually when I play Skaven against this, I'm expecting a whole wall of like chaff units and then like skeleton archers, maybe like a casket and some screaming skull catapults. But this build was very different. I have to say very, very clever for sure. So essentially, looking at this build, what's one thing you guys notice? I'll give you a couple seconds here. And the one thing that you're probably noticing is there's no good mortar targets. That is really, really important because oftentimes Skaven with like dual mortars will just clean shop on Tomb Kings. They'll kill the archers, they'll kill the tomb guard and the skeletons, and it's going to be a really, really bad time. So in this case, my opponent here didn't give me any good mortar targets. I mean, skeleton spearman and screaming skull catapult, okay, that's fine, but it's not going to be like a huge breadwinner. And even if I had brought one mortar, Arkin the Black can overcast Spirit Leech, and then you can basically just use these screaming skull catapult to cackle all the way to the bank. So very cool build for sure. So yeah, double skeleton spears, catapults, a skirmishing core of quad skeleton horsemen around the battlefield, very good for poking rat ogres and hell pits and any molder monster really. And then the main core of the army is going to be Arkin the Black here in the tree line. Arkin is always a solid choice. Spirit Leech, skeleton summons, very strong against Skaven. Double Necrotect and double Cambrian War Sphinx. That is a lot of HP to get through. Each of these restores, I believe, are around 1,000 HP. And yeah, so basically you can add quite a bit of HP to the existing pools here of these Cambrian War Sphinxes as long as the Necrotects do survive. And in the back, we have Sepulchral Stalkers, a cool ambush choice. Certainly looking to get my paws on them. And I did actually see this entire army right away, which was super convenient, because I did have the Ixcha's Triads deployed like right here in the forest. As soon as the battle started, I did use the concealment bombs and hid and was able to avoid detection, which was pretty lucky, to be honest. Now, the rest of my army is going to be double WARPFIRE thrower because I wanted to try them against Tomb Kings. I was expecting a ton of infantry and maybe Nehekar horsemen charging in that I could roast with the WARPFIRE throwers, but in this case, there is no such thing. My whole army is mostly Skaven slaves. I do have 2 Clan Rat Spears, double Rat Ogre, a Chieftain on a Bonebreaker, THROTT, and a Brood Horror. So that's my army, pretty basic. On top of double Wolf Rat. Wolf Rats are very good here, especially the AP variant. If you're able to catch any of the constructs, you can actually nip them down relatively effectively, especially the multi-model constructs. So it puts me in a predicament, right? Like I need to advance and shut down that catapult, but also I'm being flanked very heavily. So very, very good strategy here for my opponent. The Platypus kind of pulling me apart, forcing me into a really awkward engagement. So the first WARPFIRE thrower volley does go in. It does some solid damage, able to roast those skeleton spearmen. You can see another volley coming in over there. And now THROTT and the Brood Horror are going to be jumping in, and they get a nice burst of damage there on the Cambrian War Sphinx. But Libra Mortis is really strong, more or less having the damage of THROTT and this Brood Horror right here, so not really the prettiest situation. On top of that, here in the back, the Sepulchral Stalkers are also shooting at me. So ultimately, this is probably a better engagement for my opponent here. On the other side, you can see Skeleton Horsemen just pursuing as I do send some Skaven slaves to go deal with that Screaming Skull Catapult. And back in this fight, I do use the Rat Ogre Summon. I know it's a little bit early to blow the load here on the Rat Ogre Summon, but basically I was like, okay, this is a really important fight. I need to get some good trades here, and the Rat Ogres with the Creature Killer are actually getting some good anti-large attacks here. So I was happy with this, but obviously my main core here, the Clan Rats and the other troops getting hit with Doom and Darkness, very, very, very cool usage there, is going to be breaking my units and forcing me to run. Now here in the back, we do have the Ixcha's Triads, and they came back from their sojourn in the forest there, and now they're going to be moving in to attack the Sepulchral Stalkers, which is like a dream situation. They have 48 speed, Stalkers are 44, they can kill them outright. It's a super cost-effective trade. Now, as far as the backfield goes, we do get the Skaven Slave summons on the Screaming Skull Catapult. We got Ogres making mistaken, so this is a blunder here. I shouldn't have been chasing, but Wolf Rats are methodically hunting down the Skeleton Horsemen, which certainly feels quite good, and there's the WARPFIRE throwers again, melting some of those Skeleton Spearmen. So yeah, this fight felt really like nasty. I felt like I was going to get out traded. My opponent had 5 single entities. I only had a couple, so that trade wasn't going terribly well. So I'm like, okay, let's kind of take it a step back, go and remove the threats that are tangible, and I can get rid of them across the battlefield. So let's chase down all the Skeleton Horsemen. Over here you can see my doggos are getting those ones, and now my other doggos are going to be hunting down the Dogecoin dogs. Going to be going after these Skeleton Horsemen right here. And you can see the good old Ixcha's Triads just doing the work of the Horned Rat, able to drag down these Sepulchral Stalkers. I really like to just mix one of them into my builds. I feel like they're just a really solid, cost-effective unit with that clone ability. So right now I'm looking for picks. My Chieftain a little bit isolated here, so I will be using the Remolder to kind of heal that character up. And we do get a nice little punch there on that Necrotect, but it's able to drift away, and 2 Cambrian War Sphinxes coming at me deep. Even though it says anti-infantry character, they still fight monsters relatively well. Also, I saw a new Shopti summon, which if this was old Tomb Kings, I probably would have lost the game right now because they would have pinned me in place. But since they did nerf that recently, I was able to get away. So the Brood Horrors and THROTT able to pull out of that situation, which was certainly quite good. Chieftain helping out over here. In the meantime, Wolf Rats are just hunting down the horsemen around the map. You can see these horsemen archers getting chewed on pretty good. Got 52 Wolf Rats and also some WARPFIRE throwers coming back on the periphery of the battlefield. And this is where it gets really kind of cat and mouse. I have to be super careful. The Brood Horrors do heal, but their base HP is much lower than the Khemrian War Sphinxes, and Restore is on the table. There's a new Shopti summon here, so just trying to pick the safe engagements where I can. And here, we're nipping at the hide of the Khemrian War Sphinx, getting some pretty good damage in. So very happy with THROTT the Uncleaning Company, and now the Chieftain's going to be making its way downtown here and laying a good old people's elbow here, or the rat's elbow on the Necrotech, hopefully. But unfortunately, its attack animation, it made it leap, and it did go very far into my opponent's ranks here. So you can see Spirit Leeches going down, and potentially they could turn around and do some big work. But basically with Brood Horrors, it's actually quite micro-intensive. I was like really like spam clicking in circles trying to get away from like these units chasing me. So here I do isolate this Khemrian War Sphinx. We get a 2v1 creature killer, which is a dream situation. But it's only going to be a moment before the Khemrian War Sphinx realizes it can run over here and just take my 4 rats to Pound Town. Doom and Darkness going down too, really cool usage. My Skaven Slave Army, their leadership immediately goes to like 10, 15, very low. And yeah, THROTT and the Brood Horror cannot beat 2 Khemrian War Sphinxes, so I have to pull back here. This is a losing fight and potentially could, lose me the game if I'm not careful. So the Brood Horror, afflicted by Doom and Darkness, is going to be running. Leadership is 17, and this is like what you want to do with Brood Horrors, like get things to overchase you and turn around and gank them with your speed. They're a speed monster, not obviously a pure combat monster. My Chieftain, unfortunately, is broken. Might come back. The Wolf Rats, I still have 2 of them. So there's one here and then one on the other side as well. They've both finished off their respective prey. So, Skeleton Horseman Archers give my opponent the tools to chase things off the battlefield. A huge misplay here from me. I let my Plague Priest get isolated. I kind of forgot about it and lost track of it in the heat of battle. My opponent took advantage of that and was able to kill my rat, which I still had 3 or 4 summons left. So that really hurt. I was quite sad about that, and definitely shed a tear for that poor little rat boy. Let's get an F in chat for him. Chat. This isn't a live stream. So Wolf Rat's here, going to be hunting down the Skeleton Horseman Archers, getting that nice methodical value, hunting down the Skirmish Cab, which could really pressure my Chieftain, for example, although he's more armored. He's got 70 armor, but still, it wouldn't, be a pretty situation. So THROTT and the boys moving in. I tried to get a gooning attempt here on the old Necrotechs, but my opponent, very nice reaction, pulled the big Sphinxes forward, and they're able to get their big Pimp Claws and start doing some work. Now, I do have 54 of the Ixchis Triads. Most of the army here is large, so the Triads should be super effective against all these units. But I just have to be careful not to lose any of my big monsters and just pick off what I can. So I'm going after the Necrotechs on the edge, trying to stay away from the Sphinxes. Unfortunately, though, THROTT gets caught right in the center of the formation. I got really lucky and was able to escape there. So now you can see I'm Tokyo drifting around the sides, trying to get Arkin, but Arkin keeps falling back to the big monsters. And that is a really bad situation for me. Though I'm a little bit ahead on the bounce of power, that beautiful skeleton summon is going to tie down all my supporting chaff, WARPFIRE throwers, just bathing my own Brood Horror in fire and probably leading to it breaking here. Oh, it looks like it's going to get away. Little WARPFIRE throwers. There was no good targets for them in this game. It was pretty unfortunate. But the cool part about them is they only cost 550, so it's not a huge deal if they don't do that much. And here you can see they're trying to fire, but they're obstructed. I think I was shooting into the Skeleton Warrior summons, trying to wear those guys down. Granted, I probably should have been shooting at Arkin. So yeah, a bit of a mass rout. I had a nice surround there. I was very confident, but suddenly my confidence was shaken, to say the least. Ixchis Triad's going to be moving across, and this is really good here. And probably one of the first, I have to say, this game, the Tomb Kings have been doing such a good job, the Platypus, of keeping the blob together. I haven't been able to get great picks, but this is the first time in the whole game when I was able to get a pick that was really away from everything else. So I send in the Skaven Slaves and the Ixchis Triads to block up the advancing chariots, which allows me time to 3v1 this Khemrian War Sphinx. So my rats, even though they're very tattered, are getting a ton of damage on this Sphinx. We've easily done about 2,000-3,000 damage. And from here, trying to get my Wolf Rats to look for some openings, just kind of drifting about. And yeah, that was a good trade. We took very little damage when we basically brought that Khemrian War Sphinx down. It's now crumbling at -40. The Chieftain of the Brood Horror taking quite a beating. Leadership, of course, very fickle. And THROTT, even though, it's THROTT, his leadership on the Brood Horror isn't the best, right? But we do take down the Sphinx, which is huge. However, in doing so, THROTT gets broken, my Chieftain here, and all these guys are in really bad shape. So right now, I'm just going to be trying to rally my forces while the Tomb Kings just chase me down. I am going to be sending in some Skaven Slaves, of course, to obey the attacking rule. But yeah, they're just going to be getting karate chopped here. So here they come, the brave little Skaven Slaves. They got their shanks out for this Necrotech. Did they get any damage on it? That's the question. It's hard to say. So THROTT is back. The Brood Horror will be back in a second. Wolf Rat's coming in. Skaven Slaves, of course, here are attacking. The other ones here are charging in as well. And I'm just trying to get that good angle, looking for an opening here while these troops attack. So we send in the Wolf Rats first, if I'm not mistaken. I think we do that in just a second. Yeah, we go after Arkin. We want to kind of lock him in place, and then here comes THROTT. So THROTT's going to be moving in. Bounce Power's in our favor, but really it's very deceptive because my characters are very fickle in the leadership department, whereas my opponents are not. So Ark in the Black does take a little bit of poke. Skaven Slaves with the spears piling in. We get more Skaven Slaves, and the Wolf Rats are also going to be jumping in. And right now we get a really, really juicy one. We're finally able to get that Necrotect. So THROTT the Unclean and the Brood Horror able to bring that character down. Ark in the Black, though. See, this is what I'm talking about. This, like, one summon is so destructive against me, but I think with the other Sphinx being caught out of position, we barely just have enough to get this. It is still really close. That Bounce Power incredibly deceptive, but the Necrotect here is not bad on leadership, actually, even though for this point in the game being debilitated, and which is pretty much the undead equivalent of exhausted. Yeah, and like every time there's a skeleton summon, my entire backbone of my army like breaks basically, right? You can see my monsters are breaking here, and we're just trying to get these Skaven Slaves in, and while the Chieftain and the Pit Fighters keep fighting here, the Rat Ogres doing their best. We do have a couple spears and Ix's Trides in the distance, so hopefully we can rally these forces. But you see what I'm saying about this? It's like, it's really, really stressful. So here, running over to my Skaven Slaves, which are charging these skeleton warriors here. The Rat Ogres and Wolf Rats are going to be moving back in. But man, oh man, these big old Sphinxes have been an absolute pain for me here. And that Brood Horror is broken. THROTT's like, screw those shit. He jumps in, tries to go for the kill here on Arkin. It's very dicey. Thankfully, the skeleton summons will be disappearing here in a hot second, about 15 seconds. And here comes the Ix's Trides. Very useful. You know, 16 anti-large units in a very close game like this is quite clutch for sure. And THROTT just working around, trying to get on Arkin here, but very good micro from my opponent, just pulling around the Camarine War Sphinx. And the giant pimp slap right in the face. I got outplayed there for sure. But THROTT, thankfully, is able to turn around, attack that Necrotect. And the other Brood Horror did come back from the rallying here and is able to finish off Ark in the Black, which was super clutch. Wolf Rats piling in. These are the AP Wolf Rats. Should be able to nip some HP off this character. THROTT the Unclean broken once again. But from here, the Brood Horror plus Wolf Rats and the Pit Fighters, who are immune to psychology for Rat Ogre, super useful here, should be able to drag down this Camarine War Sphinx, especially with the Ix's Trides coming in and some Skaven Slave Spears. And that was an absolute barn burner of a game. Very well played to my opponent, the Platypus. That was a really, really fun one. We were playing on Anticity's really cool best of 3 ladder, which was quite a bit of fun. But yeah, that was certainly a ferocious match, to say the least. Now, as far as the build goes, I think this build would be good against like traditional Tomb Kings builds, like meta Tomb Kings build, but this was a very unique build, which I believe the Platypus mentioned that Ice Power Total War had used against the Skaven. But yeah, it's hard to say. I think that this build is still pretty functional. I mean, 2 Brood Horrors is always good. The Chieftain was a little bit questionable. I guess I could have spent my money a little bit better. Maybe like a single Jezzail or something, but I feel like I'm just going to get run over like with the Jezzail. It might like do some damage, but then the Necrotechs are just going to have their way. I mean, you do have some ways of protecting it. I don't know. Yeah, this was a very aggressive build. Very nasty for sure. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. It was a very well played game. Awesome game there. And yeah, we'll be back trying to get some Skaven games in. I haven't played them in a while, so working on it. Also on that note, if there's any other factions you guys think I haven't been playing enough that you'd like to see on the channel, I'm giving the High Elves a kick. Eventually I'll get back and try and play some Druchii, but they're a tough one for sure. They're a tricky pickle. All right, guys, thanks again. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care.